The stage was set within our Tampa family home, a theater for my coronation. Ryan, the elder son, the rightful heir, took my place at its center. I rose like a king surveying his court, the crystal of my wine glass ringing out like a bell. And with a voice soaked in triumph, I delivered the proclamation we'd all been waiting for. A smile stretched across my face. Mother and father have made their decision. And all 8 of the Florida rental properties, the entire portfolio, are officially mine. Tegan, I added, glancing at her, a shame you get nothing. The room detonated in a symphony of my success. Whistles cut the air. I heard someone yell, "It's about damn time." Finally. My cousins, the loyal jesters, swarmed me, slapping my back in feigned admiration. My fiancée Brooke was absolutely radiant, her smile as brilliant as the diamond I'd placed on her finger. She looked like she'd just hit the jackpot, and she had. Mother, bless her, was dabbing at a tear. The perfect proud tear for her favorite son. But Tegan, she didn't applaud. She didn't even flinch. She just stared, a statue of ice. Her eyes locked onto Dad, her voice a chilling whisper that cut through the noise. "So composed, Dad. But you've overlooked one small detail, haven't you?" I watched Dad's hand freeze, his fork hovering before his lips like a stalled hummingbird. My victory grin evaporated. Beside me, Brooke's glass paused mid-sip. 30 fawning relatives suddenly fell into a suffocating, dead hush. The only sound was the low drone of the air conditioner, a funeral dirge for my perfect moment. And in that single frozen second, a cold dread coiled in my gut. Every single person in that room felt it too, the beautifully crafted script. The one we'd all perfected for this very performance was about to be set on fire. Now, before I reveal the details she used as a weapon against us, the one my father so carelessly forgot, and how the rest of that day played out. As she turned my triumph into a public execution right there at the dinner table. Go ahead and drop a comment, let me know something. Tell me where you're watching this story unfold from tonight. I just need to know that I'm not the only one out there who's had their perfect victory snatched away by someone they thought they'd already buried. Swore their undying love just moments before the fangs came out. Showed you their true rotten core. Hit that like button if you know the exquisite pleasure of a perfectly sprung trap. I held a placid smile as my dear family erupted in applause, celebrating my execution. But trust me, what I had planned was a finale that would make every single one of them choke on that applause. Now let's set the stage. Let me show you the intricate web I'd been weaving. The name is Tegan Whitaker, and had you seen my family before that fateful inheritance meeting, you'd have bought the whole facade hook, line, and sinker. The picture-perfect Florida dynasty, a sprawling house in South Tampa, gleaming boats in the driveway as props. The blindingly white smiles for the annual Christmas card, every single December. But a photograph is a flat lie. It never reveals the silent, brutal power structure that governed our lives the second the cameras were put away. And at the center of that universe was Ryan, the golden sun, the sun king everyone was forced to orbit. From the moment he drew his first breath, he was the main character. He commanded attention. They listened to him first, they listened to him longest, and they forgave his trespasses in a heartbeat. The little league hero, the high school quarterback, the anointed one. The son who magnanimously stayed local to help manage Grandma Margaret's portfolio of rental properties, a throne handed to him on graduation day. Every family barbecue was just another coronation ending with a sycophant slapping his back, slurring about how he was the future, the very soul of the Whitaker legacy. He inhaled their adoration like it was the only air worth breathing. And I learned quite early that the shadows he cast were the perfect place to hide and to plot. I was born in his shadow, a place where sunlight never reached. Even teachers would call me by his name, and Ryan would just laugh, correcting them, as if he owned my identity too. Birthdays were his coronation. His cake was always cut first. The sound of his gifts being torn open was a symphony of my irrelevance, his fabricated victories becoming the family gospel at the dinner table, while my own truths remained silent, sharpening themselves in the dark. I recall asking for a math tutor in middle school, a simple request. Mother claimed the budget was tight, that every penny was accounted for. A lie. The money was for Ryan's new cleats. Trivial. And then I found my weapon. A full scholarship to the University of Georgia, my ticket out of that gilded cage. My father's only acknowledgement was a sneer. "Guess someone has to abandon Florida," he said. An order I was more than happy to obey. The day I turned 22, I packed my life into that dented Civic, a ghost escaping a haunted house. I drove north on the I-75, watching Tampa's glow shrink in the rearview mirror until it was just a dead star. Atlanta. That's where I learned to breathe my own air. The first breath that didn't taste of resentment and second-hand glory. I was no longer a phantom defined by someone else's light. I started at the bottom, a junior analyst in a high-rise tower, a predator learning the scent of money in a commercial real estate firm. I didn't just crunch numbers on apartment buildings and soulless strip malls. I was studying the architecture of power, how deeds are forged, how trusts are manipulated, how an empire's ownership can be quietly surgically transferred with nothing more than ink and a witness. Who knows which way the wind is blowing? My trips home became tactical. I returned only at the request of Grandma Margaret. She was the only one in that family who had eyes, the only one who never held me up to Ryan's empty shine. She never asked me to be happy there. She just saw the storm gathering in my eyes, unlike that pale imitation they called a sun. She would hold court on her screened porch, her throne surveying the bay that was our kingdom, her silver hair a crown pinned in place with a weaponized pencil, and she'd absorb my briefings, cap rates, leverage, asset weaknesses, and lease abstracts not as numbers but as the language of absolute power. Some weekends she would present me with the keys to one of their properties, cold steel in my palm, and instruct me to walk its empty halls alone to feel the undeniable weight of true command, a secret anointing that the rest of them were too blind to see. Those sessions weren't my oxygen. They were my war council. She never once insulted me with labels like the smart one or the independent one, the dismissive pleasantries our family used. When they wanted to shelve you away, she would just look at me, a queen appraising her heir and state, the facts. You see the architecture of things, Tegan, a vision far more potent than money. When I departed under the cover of Sunday night, she'd place a cold sweet tea in my hand, a reminder of the cold resolve required, and tell me the drive was only 9 hours, not an exile, but a strategic retreat. The rest of them stopped seeing me. My presence in a room became a ghost's. My mother's calls withered into hollow texts about holidays. My father only dialed my number when his golden boy Ryan was about to sink another deal on one of their precious properties. I became the convenient narrative, the daughter who did her own thing. In the language of my family, that meant the asset. We no longer need to monitor their gravest error. I never hated Ryan for it. Hate is a fire. He was worthy only of the cold, precise attention one gives a problem to be solved. I didn't just accept the rules, I mastered them. The way a predator learns the patterns of its prey. You don't fight the climate, you use it to your advantage. You let the others grow weary in the heat, you conserve your energy, you wait. Complaining is a waste of oxygen, a tell for the weak. My promotion in Atlanta was a necessary stepping stone. Senior property analyst was a key that unlocked certain doors 2 years ago. I acquired a small, sterile condo in Midtown, my command center. I filled it with plants, a perfect cover of domesticity. They thrived because I am meticulous, not because I was lonely. There were no distractions. I forged a life where my worth wasn't a reflection in their blinding, undeserved spotlight, but a weapon sharpened in the shadows. The only true alliance I had was with Grandma Margaret. With every visit I saw her physical form fading, a candle burning down. But her mind, her cunning, remained a razor's edge. Her eyes were always sharp, and she started asking the right questions. The important questions. About trusts, about firewalls, about how a legacy could be shielded from the hands of those who perform love for an audience and manage fortunes into the ground. I gave her the schematics, of course. She was the only one who saw my knowledge not as a tool for others, but as the weapon it was intended to be. She made her exit 13 months ago, a quiet, tactical retreat. I drove down for the final curtain call, observing from the back. I watched Ryan perform the eulogy, a masterclass in false sentiment. The audience wept on cue, and I felt her absence. Not as a void, but as the silence after an order is given. A final command that I now fully understood. That is the man who walked back through the doors of that house. The perfect Trojan horse returning to Tampa for the final negotiation. 31 years old. Calm, carrying my 9-point solution. All it took was their manufactured distance and one very old woman's pathetic, unshakable faith in me. 3 years. That's when the real work began completely under their noses. 3 years ago, I started building my own kingdom in the shadows of theirs. And my dear Grandma Margaret was its first unwitting citizen. I remember hearing about the call, a Tuesday evening summoning the family saint. A pathetic plea for them to come down the following weekend. No real reason given, of course, just that she needed their eyes. Her little trap was set, and I can just picture the hero's arrival, rolling up that driveway in old Northeast St. Pete like a knight in shining armor. And there she was, the queen spider, waiting on her porch to spin her web, armed with 2 folders and a pot of coffee, her instruments of judgment. I bet the air was thick enough to choke on. She never was one for subtlety. No time wasted. I can see her sliding the first folder across the table. The opening salvo in her pathetic little war. Bank statements, rental income logs, all my hard work reduced to numbers on a page. The expense reports for the 8 properties I'd managed so creatively. 8 properties. The numbers didn't tell the whole story, but they didn't have to. They couldn't lie about the last 18 months of my quiet revolution. More than $400,000 in rent reallocated to a better cause me. It had vanished into my brilliant little fiction's maintenance, emergency repairs, and my personal favorite management fees. The receipts were a masterpiece of obfuscation missing or photocopied into a blurry, illegible mess, a ghost trail. But the handwriting on the few solid ones, well, an artist always signs his work. It matched mine, of course. I can see her watching them stone-faced. Her mouth a thin, grim line as the truth dawned on her chosen hero. I gave him access, I can hear her saying, because he swore he wanted to learn. Oh, I learned all right. I learned the business she was too sentimental to see. I didn't just learn the business, I learned how to make it bleed for me. I let the silence hang for a moment, then played my final card of feigned innocence. But why not? Just confront him. Her headshake was slow, weary. The precise reaction I had engineered over months of careful suggestion. Because your parents, she hissed, the venom I'd nurtured finally spilling over, would defend him. She recited the script I knew by heart. They'd say, boys will be boys. They'd promise he'll pay. It all back someday, that lovely hollow word. Someday, the land of fools and broken promises. And by the time someday gets here, she said, her voice cracking with the truth I'd shown her, there will be nothing left. The trap was sprung, and with perfect timing she opened the second folder. The sound of rustling paper was my applause. The arsenal I'd helped her assemble lay gleaming on the table. Not mere drafts, these were declarations of war. I saw the title, a beautiful monument to my patience, a revocable living trust. Her name was listed as trustee, a temporary shield. A queen regent holding the throne for the true king. And then there it was, my name. Sole successor trustee. The words felt like a coronation. And beneficiary of every single rental property. Every brick, every tenant, every stream of income diverted to its rightful owner. Me. Beside it, the killing blow 8 quitclaim deeds sharp and final as a guillotine's blade, poised to sever my brother from the family fortune instantly and irrevocably. The board was set. All that was left was the ceremony. My signature, my performance of reluctance, and 2 witnesses I had already chosen for her. She explained the mechanics, her voice a cold monotone echoing the very words I had used with her lawyer. She spoke as if describing a coming frost. A living trust, she began, is a fortress. It avoids probate. It keeps everything in the shadows away from prying eyes. No public filings. No alarms raised until long after the castle had been taken. The deeds, she continued, her voice low and conspiratorial, they transfer the titles instantly. A silent coup executed in the dusty halls of the county recorder's office. Once filed, she finished, they are ironclad. A beautiful, brutal word for a beautiful, brutal plan. Her trusted notary was scheduled for Monday morning. My man. The final piece was moving into place. The timing was perfect. No chance for the family's pet lawyers to catch the scent. They would never lay eyes on this masterpiece of legal warfare, not until I allowed it. I let my gaze fall the picture of humility and asked the question she needed to hear. Why me? She looked out at the gray churning water, finding the strength I had given her. Her answer came back without a flicker of doubt. Because you, she said, her voice filled with a conviction I had carefully built, are the only one who truly understands. What these houses really are. Oh, I understood. 32 units, 32 streams of revenue, the foundation of my empire. On schedule, ensuring the little heirs stay in their precious little school, a legacy you will not squander. Not on speedboats or fleeting women or whatever glittering trash my dear brother fancies this week. I offered a token. Protest mentioning Ryan would ignite with fury when the truth came out. She silenced me with a look. He won't find out. Not until the locks have all been changed and the key is in your pocket. That is the art of it. We spent the weekend perfecting our masterpiece, honing every vicious little detail. She didn't walk me through the trust. She armed me with its language, showed me where my signature would land like a killing blow, ensuring I understood that once the ink was dry and the papers filed with the county, those houses, that future, would be mine. Their opinions would be nothing but air. She had me brand every single page with my initials, a ward against any future claim. Oh, I knew exactly what throne I was agreeing to take. Monday morning, the official arrived at 9 o'clock on the dot. We executed the plan in the formal dining room, the blades of the ceiling fan slicing the stale air above us. The matriarch's hand holding the pen was as steady as stone, not a single tremor. The second the notary's car pulled away, she produced the bourbon, pouring a measure for each of us, a toast to the new era, long before the sun had reached its zenith. She raised her glass, the crystal ringing against mine. The transfer is complete. And now, she said, her voice dropping, we entomb it. She made me swear on the dust of her ancestors that I would never speak of this, not until the day a fool came knocking, trying to claim a kingdom that had already crowned its new ruler. I gave her my solemn, vicious vow, word, a pact sealed in fire. We fed his phantom claims to the outdoor hearth that night, a private little ceremony. I watched the flames consume the paper, a hungry accomplice to our little coup, as the smoke his dissolving future coiled like specters into the silent palms. For the next 2.5 years, the illusion held perfectly. The stage was set, the actors oblivious. On the surface, nothing had changed. My dear brother Ryan, the little prince, kept collecting his allowance, puffing out his chest and boasting about his precious portfolio, a kingdom built on sand. And my parents, the ever-adoring audience, kept showering him with praise. So proud of the responsible little monarch he was pretending to be. My trips down from Atlanta were surgical strikes every couple of months. A quiet inspection of my assets, a whisper to a tenant, a tightening of a loose screw. I was the ghost in the machine, quietly undoing his careless damage, methodically erasing his presence while he invented new ways to bleed the properties dry. The truth was hiding in plain sight, filed away in a dusty county office. The owner of record, Tegan Whitaker, my name. The ink was long dry. But why would they ever look? The lazy and the arrogant never bother with the fine print. The matriarch's strength began to fade then, and our timeline sharpened. The ticking clock grew louder. Her world shrank from the porch to her bed, but her mind remained a steel trap. The game was still on. Every time I walked into her room, she'd fix me with that knowing gaze and ask the question. Still, our secret, a conspirator's password whispered across the pillows. Always, I'd reply. It was our covenant, our private confirmation. 2 simple words that held the weight of an entire dynasty. The last time I saw her, her grip was iron, her knuckles a bloodless white. I felt the sharp edge of her ring dig into my palm, branding me with her final lesson. Remember, she rasped, a voice like dry leaves, paper beats promises. Every single time. Her last will and testament delivered with chilling certainty. Then a slow smile crept across her lips, the triumphant smirk of a player who had just checkmated an opponent that never even knew the match had begun. 7 months ago, the old queen fell, and the board became mine to command. The last eulogy still echoed in the stale air when Mother's call came, a summons masquerading as a request. Just one more day. The estate was the bait, her strained voice the hook. Property, she'd whispered, a brittle sound like old paper about to tear. She played the part of the reluctant messenger, but I knew the truth. The vultures were gathering. Tomorrow at the house. Perfect. The stage was already set for their little play. I knew the script by heart. The pack, circling what they foolishly believed was already theirs. Pawing at the spoils before the ink on the death certificate had a chance to dry. I could have refused, but the tremor in her voice was a tactical opening I couldn't ignore. It was the beautiful sound of desperation. I'll be there, I said, feeling my own trap click shut. The next afternoon, the dining room had been transformed into a makeshift courtroom. Father, playing the part of the judge, sat enthroned at the head of the table. Sleeves rolled for business, a yellow legal pad his flimsy shield. At his right hand, the crown prince, my dear brother Ryan, lounged with practiced arrogance. His legs were splayed out, a petty king already surveying his conquered land. Mother, the nervous courtier, fluttered around with a coffee pot no one would touch, a useless ritual. The air was far too thick with greed to swallow anything. Their weapon of choice waited in the center of the table, a crisp stack of documents. So official, so final. He slid the top page across the polished wood, a declaration of war. "Just a formality," he began, his voice a low rumble of practiced manipulation. "We're keeping everything in the family," he continued. The unspoken threat was deafening. To avoid any complications, to keep me from what was mine. "We just need your signature here," he said, pointing a finger at the line. A signature to erase my existence from the rental empire they were stealing. My eyes scanned the title, the words practically glowing with their intent waiver. Of inheritance interest, real property. How delightfully, predictably crude. Below it, a neat list of 8 addresses, the kingdom they sought to usurp. My pulse was a slow, steady drumbeat. I had anticipated a battle, not this clumsy ambush. They had no idea what kind of surprise I had brought for them. Mother jumped in, her voice a thin thread. "Sweetheart, it's only paperwork." "Ryan is shouldering the burden now," she pleaded. "He's handling everything for us." Mom hit her cue perfectly. "He handles the day-to-day," she recited just as we'd rehearsed. "It gives him full control. It keeps the peace." That was the key word, peace. My peace. The word hung in the air, sweet and heavy. I let a smirk touch my lips, rolling the pen across my knuckles. A perfect little performance. It felt like a scepter in my hand. "See, Tegan," I purred, leaning forward. "Nobody wants to get the men in suits involved. Just a little ink on paper, and we're a happy family again." But I watched her hand, that stubborn little hand, push the document back. Barely an inch. "I'm not signing anything." The words landed like stones, and the temperature in my world plummeted. I watched Dad's face crumble. His eyebrows, those bushy signs of his weakness, shot up his forehead. Mom's arm locked in place, the coffee pot hovering like a frozen bird. The tableau was almost comical. Dad, bless his predictable heart, tried to patch the hole in my plan. "Now, Tegan, don't be difficult." He was so out of his depth. "This isn't about taking," he stammered, "anything from you. It's for clarity." I almost laughed. Clarity. As if she had any idea. She ignored him, her eyes locking onto mine for a split second before returning to the old man. "A challenge. I won't sign away what Grandma intended for me." The ghost? She was playing the ghost card. A classic, desperate move. My fingers tightened and the pen in my hand finally went still. The silence was a weapon. Mom, ever the loyal soldier, picked up hers. It was time for the emotional assault. "Your grandmother," she began, her voice trembling on cue, "only wanted this family to be provided for. She would be heartbroken to see us fighting like this." The guilt. Lay it on thick, Mother. But Tegan's heart was stone. "She's not here to see a thing, is she?" The coldness was almost admirable. She let the silence hang for a beat, a little flourish of her own. "And let's be clear. I am not the one fighting. I'm just not surrendering." So dramatic. Dad leaned across the table, his final pathetic gambit. He lowered his voice, the one he thought was so intimidating. The same tone he used when I was a kid, a hollow threat that never worked then either. The one from when I was 10 and broke curfew. "Tegan," he rumbled, "we are trying to do this the easy way." He gestured to me, trying to build a case. "Ryan has poured years into those houses." A flicker of a bitter smile on her face. I could almost hear her thoughts. "Years of pouring my inheritance into his own pocket, you mean? The little brat." That was it. Time to drop the curtain. I let the pen fall from my hand, the clatter echoing my own impatience. The mask of the calm, reasonable brother cracked and fell away. "You live in Atlanta," I said, my voice sharp as glass. "You don't get a vote. Want them. Why make this hard?" The question hung in the air, so perfectly naive. "They're not yours to give," she said, her voice like flint. And there it was. The first spark. I glanced at Mom. The tears welled up right on cue. A masterful performance. "We just want everyone to be happy after everything we've—" The words trembled, laced with just the right amount of grief. "Been through." She invoked the ghost of her own mother, a brilliant, classic gambit. Tegan's jaw tightened. She saw the trap, the beautiful, cruel logic of it. It makes refusal feel like a second betrayal. She stood a pillar of ice. "I'm sorry you're—" "Upset, but I'm not waiving anything." The defiance. I felt Dad's rage simmering beside me. His hand cracked against the table, a sound like splintering bone. The cups jumped in fear. "This is ridiculous!" he roared, the sound filling the small room. "You're acting like we're stealing from you." But she just stared back, unmoved by the storm. Her hand went to her purse, her fingers closing around her keys. The jingle was a challenge. "No, she replied, her voice dangerously calm. I'm acting like someone who knows exactly what's hers. I had to get to my feet to close the distance, let her feel my shadow. The blood was pounding in my ears. You're being selfish. I let the accusation land sharp and true, a bitter little laugh. Typical. She moved toward the door, then stopped. Theatrics. She always needs a final line, a parting shot to leave us bleeding. Selfish, she declared to the room, is thinking you can erase someone's wishes with a signature because it's convenient. The words were poison darts. Mom's voice finally broke. Tegan, please, she cried, a raw, wounded sound. It was perfect. Don't leave like this. But Tegan was already a ghost halfway out the door. She didn't even look back. I'll see you when you're ready. To respect what Grandma actually wanted. A final twist of the knife disguised as piety. The screen door slammed shut, a period on her little speech. The silence she left was heavy. Always has to be the victim, I muttered the words, tasting like ash. Dad's heavy hand landed on my shoulder. Let her go, son. Mom's performance had ended. The sobs were real now, ragged and deep. I watched through the window as she got in her car, the architect of this perfect little tragedy. She rolled the windows down, ready to drive off into the heat, leaving the wreckage behind her. The cloying Florida air was the first thing I shed. 9 hours of cold steel and asphalt separating me from them. They spent the following weeks telling themselves my silence was a tantrum. A flurry of group texts preaching about a healing I had no intention of allowing. My father's 2 voicemails, each a masterpiece of escalating panic. His rage was a predictable, impotent thing. Ryan sent his little dagger a single, perfect message. Grow up. I let their words dissolve into nothing. My response was being prepared. Instead, I acquired immaculate copies of the instruments of their demise. The recorded deeds filed and sealed like scripture, tucked away in a fireproof folder. I became a statue of patience. I pictured them in their rooms, busy scripting their little heroic drama. A fable where they were the martyrs and I the monster in the attic. The broken child who couldn't forgive a little transgression. They never once considered the grudge was a debt I was collecting for someone else. 2 weeks ago, the trap was officially set. The invitation appeared in my Atlanta mailbox, a gilded summons. Thick, arrogant cream cardstock edged in a boastful gold. A formal celebration of Margaret Whittaker's legacy, it proclaimed. Her name printed in raised letters, an exquisite insult. Inside a note in my mother's perfectly forged cursive. Please join us to honor Grandma's wishes, it cooed, and celebrate the future of the family properties. Their stolen kingdom. Saturday at 3. We've missed you. A lie so sweet it could rot your teeth. I knew precisely what it was. The victory lap before the fall. The final glorious act of a tragedy they wrote for themselves. The group chat was their chorus of fools. Ryan posted a selfie grinning like a king in front of one of the houses. His caption, big things coming. He was more right than he could ever imagine. A bold little claim for the Whittaker portfolio. Brooke's comment was nauseating, all heart emojis for her precious, clueless future husband. The aunts and cousins lapped it up like starving dogs. Someone even had the gall to joke, Tegan better show up this time. I offered no reply. My silence was its own answer as I cleared my weekend and selected the hard-shell suitcase I use for hostile takeovers. It wasn't clothes I packed. Inside, I arranged 3 folders, each a meticulously prepared kill shot, its tabs color-coded for each stage of the demolition, and a flash drive. My digital guillotine holding every damning document scanned in perfect, undeniable resolution. The zipper was a final, satisfying sound. I loaded the arsenal into the car before the sun rose on Friday, pointing the nose of my car south on I-75, ready for the 9-hour pilgrimage to their little paradise. I could make that drive in my sleep. The closer I got to Tampa, the more the air itself seemed to crackle, anticipating the storm I was bringing. It was a pressure I could feel pressing against the windshield. The gaudy billboards surrendered to the skeletal palm trees, which in turn gave way to the exit signs that felt like a countdown. Every single mile marker wasn't a measure of distance, but a reminder of the debts I was here to collect. This was never a return. It was a reckoning. I made one tactical stop for fuel just outside Ocala, glancing at my phone. 23 new messages polluting the family group chat, each one a pathetic variation on how thrilled they were about Ryan. Finally, stepping up, my father, ever the diplomat, sent a private message, hoping we could finally put all of this behind us. I let the message bleed unread. By the time I was gliding over the Howard Franklin Bridge, the bay glittered below the sun like a million tiny shards of broken glass. The air hummed with a perfect predatory stillness, the kind of quiet that settles just before the trap is sprung. Every piece on the board was exactly where I'd placed it, and then right on schedule her predictable car turned the corner, crawling back into the old neighborhood that had long since forgotten her. Just past noon on Saturday, the audience had already gathered, the cousins from Orlando gossiping on the lawn, Uncle Ray from Naples, and of course the property manager, the fool. I've been bleeding dry for years without him ever noticing a single missing cent. I watched from my throne on the porch. The white tents were my circus. The caterers, my minions, unloading trays of glistening shrimp and mini crab cakes. A little jab, they were always her favorite. The bartender stood ready under the oak. This was no mere meeting. It was a public execution cleverly disguised as my coronation. Mother saw her first sweeping down the driveway like a well-rehearsed actress. All clicking heels and counterfeit pearls, her arms opening wide, as if a decade of silence had never happened. You made it. Everyone's been asking about you. The lie was as thick as her perfume. She smothered my sister in a hug I knew felt like a cage. Then came father dutifully playing his part, clapping her shoulder. That hollow forced heartiness of a man who's lost all control and is desperately pretending everything is perfectly fine. Good to have the whole family together, he muttered. But his eyes, they betrayed him, darting straight to the suitcase clutched in her hand. The final testament. I leaned back, Brooke draped elegantly on my arm. We both held our mimosas chalices for the coming victory. I lifted my glass, a lazy mocking toast across the lawn. Look who decided to grace us with her presence. Brooke giggled into my shoulder the perfect final note, which only made his laughter ring more hollowly in the room. A few of the cousins offered weak, frightened little waves. The rest, smartly, pretended not to feel the predator that had just walked into their den. The house reeked of lemon-scented polish and cloying ambition. Every surface was a shrine to my brother. Framed photos of Ryan playing the benevolent lord with his tenants lined the entryway. And there, the crown jewel of his arrogance, a huge county tax map displayed on an easel. 8 perfect red circles like targets waiting for an archer. Someone in a fit of delusion had even printed glossy, little pamphlets. The Whitaker family rentals, they read. A new era. Oh, how prophetic. I dragged my suitcase through the heart of their celebration, the wheels a funeral drum. I left it standing beside the couch, a dark monument, impossible to ignore. I watched Mother's mask of a smile crack. Just for a second. Father coughed a pathetic, nervous sound. Ryan simply lifted an eyebrow, still blissfully unaware of the danger. He said nothing. The lambs kept wandering in for the slaughter. Their tame lawyer, Mr. Hargrove, arrived, shaking hands like a politician. He soaked up the congratulations, already smelling his victory bonus. As if the paperwork was anything more than kindling for the fire to come. The tenants they'd invited as stage props wandered around, looking lost but easily placated by the promise of free food. Such simple creatures. Then came Ryan's pack of hyenas, his so-called friends slapping, his back asking about the closing date, feeding his ego. I played the part, nodding politely when cornered, accepting a bottle of water as if I were a guest. I watched. I let the room fill with the poison of their absolute certainty. They truly believed their story was already written. A slow, satisfied smile, each hollow word of praise for my brother, was another stone cementing the foundation of my resolve, the very wall they built to exile me. And then there was Brooke, gliding through the room, a gaudy diamond glinting on her hand a shard of glass catching the light. This, she cooed to a flock of sycophants, waving a hand over the glossy brochures. 8 perfect streams of income, she chirped, before we even say I do. Ryan, my dear brother, preened, his arm a possessive clamp on her waist, soaking in the adulation, as if it were oxygen. I remained by the window, a silent observer. The handle of my suitcase was a cold, hard promise in my grip. I scanned the room, cataloging the audience. 32 souls, a perfect number of witnesses, more than enough to ensure no one could ever deny they saw justice being served. The room was a pressure cooker just waiting for the signal. And then the fool stood, the stage was set. The air thick with champagne and ignorance, he raised his glass, a cheap crystal scepter. His voice, cutting through the mindless chatter with a practiced booming, authority he never earned. I just want to thank, he began, Mom and Dad for their faith in me. for entrusting me with Grandma Margaret's legacy." The words tasted like ash in my mouth. He flashed that politician's smile. "As of today, all 8 rental properties are now officially," he paused for effect, "mine." The family tradition, he called it. A tradition of betrayal, perhaps. Stronger than ever. The sheep raised their glasses. A wave of manufactured joy washed through the room. A fool yelled his name. Then, the first clap like a single gunshot, and the whole flock followed suit. I let their pathetic applause swell a hollow sound bouncing off the polished wood. I savored the crescendo, the peak of their delusion. The perfect moment. Then I sent my little Trojan horse rolling forward, its wheels a death rattle. On the hardwood floor, every single hypocritical head swiveled in my direction. The clapping choked and died. It hung in the air, a broken thing. I stopped positioning myself at the heart of their little gathering, right beside the coffee table. The click-clack of the latches was the only sound. Then I threw back the lid. 30 pairs of eyes, wide and stupid, fixated on what lay inside. The perfectly ordered stacks of paper. My father, bless his arrogant heart, found his voice first. "Tegan, what is this? Such a predictable, impotent question." I let his words hang in the silence. My answer wasn't for his ears. I drew out the first document. The first quitclaim deed. I held it aloft, a priestess with her scripture. I angled it just so, letting the light catch the glint of the notary's seal before placing it on the table. Face up, a declaration of war. Then came the next. And the third, a cascade of ruin, 8 in total. Every single one bearing the defiant, bold signature of Grandma Margaret. Her final word embossed with the undeniable seal of the Pinellas County Clerk. And for the grand finale, I produced the Revocable Living Trust. It was thick-bound like a Bible of his damnation. I'd already marked the relevant passage for him, the successor trustee section, glowing in a cheerful, mocking yellow. Such a calm, unassuming color. I set it on top of the deed's a tombstone on a freshly dug grave. The period at the end of his pathetic sentence. Only then did I grant him my attention. I looked my father in the eye. "You really memory hold this, didn't you?" The arrogance, the certainty, it all just evaporated. The blood drained from his face so fast I almost worried he'd collapse. Almost. Mother's hand shot to her mouth, a useless gesture of feigned innocence. My dear brother Ryan just stared at the papers, his mind too slow to process the new reality, like they were written in a language he'd never learned. The language of consequences. Then Mr. Harrove, the loyal family dog, took a hesitant step forward, nervously adjusting his tie. A puppet, realizing his strings had just been cut. Glasses. I watched him pick up the trust, the weapon I'd laid on the table. He flipped right to the signature page, the first kill shot, then to the schedule of assets, a beautiful list of every property they thought was theirs. His fingers, suddenly clumsy, danced across the pages. He was cross-checking the quitclaim deeds now, the second shot finding its mark against the crisp county stamps. His head lifted slow, like a man surfacing from a deep dive. "These are recorded," he said, his voice hollowed out. "All of them." He added the final beautiful detail, 3 years ago. Checkmate. Tegan is the legal owner of a record. There is no probate interest left to... He trailed off, the word was pointless. Distribute. The silence was so complete you could hear the ice cracking in their neglected drinks. Ryan, my dear cousin, lunged for the paper's a wounded animal. "That's impossible." He spat the words. Grandma was sick. She didn't know what she was signing. A pathetic, predictable defense. Mr. Hargrove barely moved the documents. I notarized similar documents for Margaret myself. The lawyer's voice was a flat line. "The handwriting is a perfect match. The notary is licensed present as the county records. These," he said, looking at them with pity, "are binding." I finally let my voice cut through the wreckage, calm as a frozen lake. Grandma knew exactly what she was doing. Every eye snapped to me. She made sure the houses went to someone who would protect the tenants. I let the words hang in the air, not bleed them dry. A little snort escaped me. My father tried to rise a puppet with cut strings and fell back into his chair. "She never told us," he whispered. "No," I said, savoring the 2 syllables. "She didn't." Ryan's face was a gargoyle's mask of rage. "You hid this the whole time. You let us plan all of this." I smiled, then a thin, sharp thing. "I let you plan what you thought was yours," I corrected him gently. "Grandma. She told me to wait for the vultures to circle, to try and claw back what was never truly theirs. And today, the feast began. That weasel Mr. Hargrove snapped the leather-bound trust shut with a dull thud, the sound of a guillotine. "Legally," he chirped, "the matter isn't settled. The properties belong to Tegan. Poison in the air." End of discussion. I watched the rats begin to squirm, ants twitching cousins trading panicked, greedy looks. Even the property manager, that spineless sycophant, who was kissing my ring just 5 minutes ago, now looked ready to melt into the expensive Persian rug. Pathetic. Then my own mother's voice, a traitorous little hiss. "How could you do this?" she whispered to Tegan. "To your own brother." My sister met her gaze all ice and false innocence. "I didn't do a thing. Grandma did." Hiding behind a dead woman. "I'm just following through." The perfect excuse. My control shattered. My hand brought the flute down and the stem snapped with a satisfying crack. Golden poison bled across the polished mahogany, drowning the corner of her precious deed. "Let it stain." She didn't flinch. "You think you've won?" The words tore from my throat. "I didn't come here to win," she purred, the perfect little martyr. "I came to make sure her wishes were respected," as if she knew the meaning of the word. The room went dead still. A perfect frozen tableau of my own creation. No one dared to mop up the spill. No one dared to breathe. Then a second sound. Brooke's glass slipped, a welcome echo of my own rage exploding on the marble. A beautiful crystalline burst of chaos, the sound of a new war beginning. I watched the expensive fizz spatter across their polished shoes and their pampered ankles. Good. Let them feel a fraction of the mess she'd made. Pieces. Her face just fractured. A silent shattering as she looked from me, the architect of her ruin, to Ryan, her useless prince, then back to the papers that sealed her fate. Not a single sound escaped her lips as she snatched her purse, a clumsy reflexive motion. She shoved aside 2 gawking relatives and fled my new domain. The front door was her only escape. The screen door's sharp crack was the starting gun. And just as I predicted, no one followed. They were all transfixed by Ryan. His face bloomed from a blotchy red to a magnificent purple, a cornered animal. He lunged, ripping the living trust from Mr. Hargrove's perfectly manicured hands and began tearing through the pages, a desperate search for a loophole that didn't exist. "This is fake," he howled, the sound so beautifully predictable. "She forged it." Oh, the excuses. Grandma was on painkillers for the last year. She didn't know what day it was, as if I hadn't planned for that. Mr. Hargrove, my perfect instrument of order, retrieved the document with the patience of a predator. He turned deliberately to the signature page, and his voice began to slice through the room, slow and heavy as a judge's gavel. Article 4, Section 2, upon the death of Margaret Whittaker, all real property listed in Schedule A shall pass. He paused her. Assassin for effect. Immediately to successor trustee Tegan Whittaker, free of probate. His voice kept on a steady, unassailable drone. Every clause was another spike pinning Ryan to the floor. When he arrived at the notary's seal and the officially recorded dates, Ryan's pathetic bellowing collapsed into the wet, ragged sound of his own breathing. And then from the shadows by the hallway, a new variable. Dylan, my middle brother, the ghost, the one who'd mastered the art of becoming furniture, took a step into the light and opened his mouth, cut through the noise for the first time all damn afternoon. "She's not lying, Dylan," the little snake announced. Every single head snapped toward him, a field of sunflowers tracking a dying sun. "I was there the day our grandmother sealed my fate. She used me, asked me to be her chauffeur to the notary, hiding it from my own parents, from my brother. I remember sitting in that hot car, a fool. She emerged with a victor's smile, and I never suspected a thing. My world spun, my eyes locked on him. You knew. You watched this train wreck coming, and you said nothing. Dylan, my own blood, met my killing gaze without flinching. She made me swear an oath, the same poisoned promise she extracted from Tegan. Apparently, some vows are worth more than the shattering of a family. My mother finally broke a pathetic heap on the sofa, her face buried in her hands, her whole body a testament to failure. My father seemed to age 10 years in 10 seconds, the life draining from his face. He actually dropped to his knees right there on the expensive rug, his hands reaching for her, for Tegan, like she was some kind of saint in this burning room. "Tegan," his voice a pathetic whine, "please. We were blind. We can undo this. We'll tear it all up. Just don't strip everything from your brother. The word cracked in his throat, a dry sob. Waterworks. Crocodile tears streamed down his face. The first real emotion I'd seen from him all day, and it was for her. My mother reached for Tegan's hand, her perfect makeup now a clownish smear. We just thought we were trying to protect the family's future. We thought you, Ryan, needed the support more, that you're so accomplished on your own. I saw Tegan snatch her hand back before the contamination could take hold. This wasn't my doing. It was Grandma's. Her final, perfect little lie. A red mist descended. The room narrowed to a single point, her smug, serene face. And just like that, the loyal brother moved a pawn sliding between the king and the cannon, a single palm pressed to Ryan's chest. "Stand down, Dylan," a voice like gravel. "Perfect." Ryan's chest heaved a stalled engine, his fists tightening into useless knots of flesh. All that power utterly neutered. The gallery of ghouls, aunts and uncles stood like statues in a ruined garden, some clutching their phones, little black mirrors capturing the glorious collapse. Others stared at the expensive floor as if it held the answers. I watched the property managers melt through a side door, rats deserting the ship. No goodbyes. They knew a terminal case when they saw one. The hired help lingered by the kitchen, a tableau of confusion, wondering if the performance was over or if they should serve another round. To the corpses. This was a mess far beyond any spilled wine. The old man remained on his knees, a testament to his failure. "We'll sell the boats," he choked out. "Empty promises. We'll take second mortgages." Music to my ears. Whatever it takes. It would take more than his soul, and he had already sold that. The mother's wails crescendoed. "We're so sorry. Please don't hate us." Oh, but I was counting on it. I watched my catalyst's eyes sweep across them, the broken parents, the seething brother, trembling with a rage I had so carefully cultivated. And then to Dylan, the hollow guardian, offering support for the very first time. "I don't hate you," the voice said, cold and clear as glass. The most beautiful lie. "But I'm done fixing things for people who never even saw me. My solution. My perfect, beautiful solution." The suitcase closed with a definitive click, the latches snapping shut like a coffin lid. The handle was raised, a final salute. My man, Mr. Hargrove, cleared his throat, the sound cutting through the silence. "I'll prepare the necessary notices to all tenants and financial institutions first thing." The demolition was officially scheduled. I let the word Monday hang in the air, a guillotine poised. The transfer of ownership is already a fact. This little meeting, it's merely a courtesy, a post-mortem. A noise tore from Ryan's throat, the sound a trapped thing makes just before the end. The mother began her theatrical wailing into a tacky throw pillow. The father just deflated, his eyes fixed on the floorboards. I allowed myself a moment to watch their little world collapse. Then I picked up my keys. 3 months later. The fallout had settled into a fine, satisfying powder. Nothing was the same, of course. It was better. It was mine. In just 3 months, the last traces of his incompetence were scrubbed away. Ryan's name, once so arrogantly scrawled across everything, was systematically erased from every lease, every bank record. Every vendor agreement for all 8 properties was purged of his stain. Then the tenants started getting the new notices. A change in management. New routing numbers for their rent with my name sitting proudly at the top. Most of them, bless their oblivious hearts, never even registered the shift. The rent checks cleared, the amounts hadn't changed. That's all that mattered to them. Except now things actually got fixed, and quickly. Funny how no one was getting billed for phantom repairs on non-existent roof damage anymore. And then my favorite part, the IRS notice. It arrived exactly 1 week after our little family gathering, right on schedule. Turns out all those years of calling his Caribbean vacations property inspections and claiming luxury resorts were business expenses finally came home to roost. Those shiny new trucks he passed off as maintenance vehicles, the government had questions. They moved swiftly, a perfect, beautiful freeze on what little he had left. Every last one of Ryan's accounts locked down tight. A lien was slapped on anything that still bore his name, a permanent mark of his failure. He scraped together money he didn't have for some cut-rate lawyer. A final, pathetic spasm. It was a delightful little show, but the ending was already written. He lost. The final penalty was a work of art landing just north of 6 figures. Now he's tethered to a payment plan, a chain that will drag behind him for decades. As for Mom and Dad, their reckoning was still to come. Their grand estate went on the market just 30 days later. The toys were the first to go. their ridiculous boats, then the jet skis, and finally Mother's collection of shiny distractions. They scuttled off to a two-bedroom box near Carrollwood, trading a view of the bay for a panorama of parked cars. As for Dad, scoffs, he simply broke, called it early retirement. The truth is, the first sign of real pressure sent his weak heart into a flutter. Mother now plays shopgirl part-time at some little boutique to afford their meager groceries. The mandatory holiday gatherings have of course ended, I suppose. There's little to celebrate in the wreckage. Brooke sent the ring back in an envelope. Cold. Clinical. Ryan retreated to a glorified closet downtown, finding his new calling, peddling second-hand cars on Dale Mabry. He still haunts the property, I hear. A ghost in his own past. His car slowing to a crawl until he speeds away like a coward when he sees my management sign staked firmly in the yard. Only Dylan sends out a signal every couple of weeks. Pathetic. Little check-ins. Nothing of substance. He's the only ghost I bother answering. He says the rest of them speak of me in the past tense now, as if I were the one buried next to Grandma Margaret. I tell him their eulogy suits me just fine. I stayed in Atlanta. The revenue from their former life now covers my mortgage and so much more. I hired a local, competent firm, a team of women who actually understand business, returning calls within the hour. Vacancies plummeted, their tenants are finally happy, and every month the profits tell the story they refuse to see. Land in my account sterile and absolute. I acquired 2 more parcels last quarter, minor conquests but entirely indisputably mine. Not a single soul from that bloodline has dared to approach me. No pathetic letters, no desperate emails, no phantom cars idling outside. The last gasp I heard was from my mother 2 months past, her voice cracking over the line begging for a Christmas miracle. I didn't dignify it with a response. I erased her plea and her number from my existence in the same breath. Some evenings I stand on my penthouse balcony, the city a galaxy of jewels at my feet, and I remember a small invisible girl pleading for a tutor while the golden boy got his brand. New toys. That girl learned early that the world bows to the loudest tantrum in the room, at least until someone with a spine decides to speak with the cold hard language of evidence. Blood doesn't forge loyalty, it's just a leash. They used to keep you in the yard. The only thing that ever shielded me was a wise old matriarch who saw the coming storm and had the foresight to chart a course in ink and a vow I honored when the moment of reckoning arrived. I still possess the Ark of my Covenant, that fireproof folder. Every deed, every clause of the trust, every official seal that sealed their fate rests inside on the highest shelf in my sanctuary. I rarely gaze upon it. I have no need to. The assets generate their revenue. The occupants remain content. And my phone remains blissfully silent. A beautiful, perfect silence where their loyalty used to be. This charade they called family. Old Margaret wasn't a complete fool. She knew that ink on a page always bleeds truer than any promise. And I was the one holding the pen. I didn't just slam a door on them. I tore the frame from the wall. Some fires are meant to burn everything. They'll cry about choosing between their bloodline and some pathetic peace they think they've earned. Let them weep into their phones and tell the world their sob story. I wonder if any of them truly understand the game. They think the most difficult part is leaving. The real power is in staying watching and never letting them back through the gate.